Here I have about, I think it's 12, but back home I have another 4 that I didn't bring. When I was a kid, I always liked old movies and older things, and growing up there were always photos of my great-grandparents who owned a famous bar in New York City called the 21 Club, and I always looked at those and idolized those. I started working at a store that catered to 1950s and 60s, like greaser rockabilly clothing, called My Baby Joe in Los Angeles, and so I got into like a 50s look with the pompadour and the jeans and the Converse and the Pendletons, and then I slowly worked back because I just became more interested in the older styles. I could show you the jacket inside, but it has damage to it because it came from a Warner Brothers warehouse, and it was in a movie. This suit dates from the late 1930s and is a really flashy Hollywood collegiate young man style, and inside I have the numbers of the numbers of the movie that were in here, except I have to track down what the movie is. And I've gotten pretty close, and it was made in early 1940, but they go by like a 3 serial number system, so I have to like search through online and see if I can find the number for the movie, but it's like 356 and it's stamped in all different parts of it, and see if a famous actor wore it.
Yeah, I love the 4 packets. That's pretty unusual.
Yeah, and the vest is really high, and I mean these pants, they start here, and they're all the way up here. I mean my sternum's up here, so they're really high-waisted, and I mean this was a really like flashy, flamboyant style, really wide and flared at the legs, like really just like draping fabric, like really heavy and nice, like because they wanted it like for you when you walk that it just like moves and like all the fabric flows and drapes, and really supposed to be really elegant and flattering. So this suit's a green linen suit from the 1920s, and it's something called somewhat like of a jazz suit because it was taken after the World War I uniforms, which were really, they buttoned really high up and they were really tight and pegged and narrow. And so when the doughboys came back from World War I, these tailors thought, oh, we're going to create this style that's reminiscent of the uniforms they wore because they're going to want to come back and buy suits, so they made things kind of in that sort of style, and those get a lot more elaborate, but this is almost more of like just kind of more of a fancier, more avant-garde 1920s outfit because of the in the pocket going across. Like this is really hard to come by, and really you see it in a lot of old catalogs, but in real life you really don't see it as much in the color, and it's a really thin linen fabric. This is all the way on my sternum, so this is like pretty high up, and it only creates like a small area for the tie to be shown. And right here is the original tag from the store where it was made is still in the shoulder, and so it just shows you that like even though it seems to be in really good shape, like it is pretty old, and it's somewhat of a museum piece because it is so old. It'll be 100 years old in about a decade, so it's pretty crazy. So this style is very much what you see on Boardwalk Empire, like what Nucky Thompson's wearing, Steve Buscemi, and it's very pegged. If you look down here, the cuffs don't even really hit the boot, they sit right above because you don't want to have a break in it, because it's just supposed to be a very clean tapered line, and the holes for the feet are so small because they're so tapered. You can't put on your shoes and then put on your pants because it won't even fit through. So this one right here is a really neat one that's kind of from the same decade as the one I'm wearing right here, but later in the decade. This one's a mid to late 1920s basket weave suit, and if you look up and look at the fabric, they're all little like interwoven squares that look like it's woven like as a basket. It's really something that's hard to come by because it was very popular in the 1920s, and then it went out of fashion, and there's nowhere around that can make that kind of fabric anymore. And then this one right here is really neat. It has these cool red and orange stripes through it with the window pane, and I bought it on eBay, and it looked really ratty when I was going up through the auction, and I just took a chance, and it got home, and it was really neat. And the pants that are right here weren't even tailored or hemmed or anything. I didn't have to have anything altered except to have the cuffs done, and the rest of it fit perfectly. And the really neat thing about it is that it has these little pleats on the back shoulders, which are really like kind of pretty uncommon, and they're like pretty aggressive looking. And then down the back it has a pleat, so you can move your arms around, and the jacket will move with it and open up, so it gives a greater range of movement. And it doesn't have a belt across the back, which is pretty odd considering that it has the pleat. So it's just kind of one of those like weird little oddball suits. This one I got on eBay also, and it was made in the late 1930s in Nuremberg, Germany during the Nazi occupation. And it didn't belong to a Nazi or anybody. It was actually custom made for a Jewish scientist who wrote a book on the history of chemical. He wrote the book on chemical reactions, and he's considered the grandfather of chemical reactions. And he only survived the Holocaust because he went to school in Switzerland when they started deporting the Jews, so he escaped. A lot of people think it's obvious, but I really love Ralph Lauren for what he does. He just has this classic look, and he goes back to a lot of the styles that I like, but gives them a really modern interpretation. A lot of people can see what I do, and they can connect it to what he does because he's so like prolific, and everyone knows Ralph Lauren. So he takes a bit of what I like to do and gives it to everybody. And then this one right here has actually been on Mangue's blog Quiz Style before. Last year, actually, almost exactly a year ago this weekend, I wore this to the opening of The Artist, and I got on his website and met Mangue for the first time with my father, and I was wearing this one. I got this one from my friend John, and when I got it, the original buttons were this color, but they had to have been replaced because a lot of them were missing, and there was a lot of holes in the pants, and I had it all rewoven so you can't even tell there are any holes, and tracked down the buttons to bring it back to how it originally was and re-sewed it, and so really brought it back to life and had it professionally cleaned, and gave it a whole new lease on life, which is what I really enjoy, being able to restore these garments that are a part of history. And this one's really neat because it's also another 1920s jacket. It's almost kind of similar to this one with the color of the buttons, and it's very summery, very flashy. The lapels are very aggressive, very sharp, and the button closure is really high up on the chest, like this one is also. Actually, one more thing is this overcoat right here. I just think the fabric's great, and I want you guys to be able to see it. It has this herringbone to it, and the really cool part about it is this really like neat Art Deco label right here. You guys check it out. It's like just bright silver silk embroidered, and it has all these cool like brown zigzag tones in it with these brown buttons, and I don't know, I guess it's very like in season now with everything changing around here in Savannah with the leaves, so I've been wearing it out a lot, and yeah, glad to share it with you guys. Thanks a lot.